Text from Jack. Meet him at the Kong Cafe, noon, 10-minute walk from the hotel. Well, I'm glad to finally hear from Jack, but Jack, this sounds very cryptic. Is it cryptic good or cryptic bad? Cryptic medium. I am in Ho Chi Minh City. It is my first trip back to Vietnam in 50 years. I'm here to do my one-man show, Hey, Hey, LBJ. It's about my year as an Army combat correspondent and how I came to the country supporting the war, but went home to protest it. I've had 2 great years with it back in the States. And I actually had 3 shows scheduled up in Hanoi last week when the damn communists throw a surprise major party meeting and my producer shuts down his theater. And now Jack seems to be giving me the runaround. Well, nothing to do but hit the streets of old Saigon. Remember this well. The heat, the humidity, the smells. But now, skyscrapers and construction cranes and Louis Vuitton and Versace and Gucci and Rolex and Burger King and Starbucks and McDonald's and this giant billboard. 2 Caucasian gals in high-end attire. It reads in English, Black Friday, 50% off. Buy now. And this is a communist country? Kong Cafe. Well, there's some communists. In an old black and white photo, North Vietnamese soldiers marching in front of a poster of Ho Chi Minh. Viet Cong fighters racing through a dried rice field. And I guess these waitresses are communists because they're all wearing Viet Cong uniforms. One is pouring Jack some coffee. So, Dave, how's it going? Well, actually difficult, just being here, the feelings. I'm up every night at 3 looking for the first flight home. I mean, even here, the waitresses, the pictures. Well, Dave, it's a countrywide chain. Viet Cong themed coffee shops. Jack Davidson grew up in Texas. His father was a Vietnam veteran, one of the rare birds that came home chirping the praises of the Vietnamese people. So Jack came here 12 years ago, says he has no intention of going back. Today, he is a manager for Viet Petro Gas. And while he may make his money exploiting oil and gas off the continental shelf, his true love seems to come from supporting the arts. So Dave, what do you want to hear first? The cryptic bad or the cryptic medium? Well, let's get the bad out of the way. Well, I've showed your work to 3 different producers, the Saigon Riverside Cafe, the Ba Mui Ba Saloon, and the Coltrane Jazz Center. Every single one of them loved it. Unfortunately, none of them is willing to take it to the Communist Culture Committee. But Jack, you think the communists would find LBJ favorable to their position? Well, that might be so, but they're not favorable to you coming to this country to tell this story. But if we were in Austin, we would just rent a venue and do it. Dave, you don't seem to understand. This is not just putting on a play. It is a political act, and the government here will not tolerate someone challenging its authority. Okay then, what is cryptic medium? Well, we try to do the show in the privacy of someone's house. I just hope I can find someone willing to take the risk. You mean like do it in somebody's living room? Dave, just the price we have to pay living in a beautiful country. Yes, it is a beautiful country. And now I have an opportunity to explore a little Saigon nostalgia. And here I am, the Rex Hotel. Back then, American information officers would nightly brief the world's media of our latest battlefield triumph. If you'd have been a fly on the wall, more appropriately a mosquito, you'd have had the best view of the brightest stars in the media Milky Way. Walter Cronkite, Dan Rather, Edward R. Murrow, Morley Safer, Peter Arnett, Mike Wallace. Wow. And when those briefings were over, the media luminaries would shuffle, grim-faced, up to the 5th floor rooftop bar where they would gulp down their whiskeys. Very sour. And from across the Saigon River, watch the battlefield explosions going off like 4th of July fireworks. Well, let's go check it out. Wow, that music is really loud. Woo! A lead singer and your backup band are just a wailing away. Oh, it's from Gino. How did you find me here? Hey, Gino, I need to go to the bathroom. Hold on a second. Dave, please do not talk to me while you go a pee-pee. Just hold on, Gino, just hold on. Okay, you will not believe where I am. 5th floor Rex Hotel. Dave, please say hello to Morley for me and order me a bowl of a French onion soup. No soup, I could probably get you some sushi. There's a crazy Japanese punk rock band practicing for tonight. Sorry, I cannot make the show. But if I could, I would give you warning number 1288. Whatever you do, do not to do your one-man show in Vietnam. 1 out of every 10 Vietnamese paid government informer. God forbid they should come after you. They will put you and everyone else in jail. Gino, I'm not in North Korea. And besides, it's a moot point. I don't even have a game. Anyway, how are you doing? I'm doing okay. I go to the VA Wednesday. More work on the leg. Hard to believe after 50 fucking years. Doug finally filed for his Hodgkin's disease. I have to hound him 6 fucking months. Of course, the VA fighting. Doug probably exposed to more Agent Orange than any of us. Anyway, wife a call. LBJ. Just think about it. Wow, just hearing Gino's voice takes me back to April 10th, 1967. I'm in Bangkok on R&R, 9 days left before I go home. And Gino is back at Cu Chi when he hears, "Let's go, Gino." Gino pops up from his bunk. "They're incoming. They're incoming." Gino rips his way through the mosquito net and cuts his leg on the way out the door. 9 young men, half naked, half asleep, stumble into this bunker. Helter-skelter. Gino takes the corner position. Then our new artist, Joe Kramer. Then our hotshot reporter, David Fisher. Then Jimmy Edwards, who is scheduled to replace me as the chief editor. Gino mumbles under his breath, "The bastards, they're walking them this way. Why don't they get them? Where are the fucking choppers?" Joe Kramer, "My God, they're coming closer." David Fisher, "Jimmy, let's get in that Jeep and get the fuck out of here." Gino hears a thunderous roar to his rear and his right. He sees a glow like when you look at the sun with your eyes closed. He feels his naked body being sprayed by pebbles. He feels his body being lifted into the air, and he thinks an explosion is going off nearby, and then he realizes, I am right in the explosion. And then his mind starts to form the thought, I am still alive. I am still alive. Brave David Fisher has stood head and shoulders above the rest of his buddies, above that bunker rim, calling the play-by-play when the 75mm rocket hits him in the chest. Parts of David are found 150 feet away at the orderly room.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. Come to talk with you. Because a vision softly.
It's the next morning. I'm back in my hotel room, and yeah, I didn't sleep very well last night. But I am practicing my LBJ lines because I'm really hopeful that Jack comes through with something. And what a great place to practice. Oh, it's my wife, Sandra. Hi, sweetheart. Hi, honey. How's it going? I tell Sandra that no producer is willing to take on LBJ. But I don't say anything about Jack's idea for an unauthorized home show. I mean, what is the point of getting somebody worried if there's nothing to worry about? Well, I know you must be disappointed, but now you can play tourist. Yeah, I probably wouldn't have come this far if I knew I couldn't do LBJ, and actually I'm heading out to Kuchi shortly. Kuchi? Well, that could be heavy, right? Well, I've had 50 years to deal with it, so I think it should be okay. Anyway, bus coming, let me Skype you tonight. Good luck. Huh. Okay, so there is one empty seat on a United flight out tomorrow morning. Maybe it's worth 100,000 miles. But I'd really like to stick around and see if I can get LBJ. And actually, there's an alleyway in this city that I have to find before I go. Back then, I lived and worked in Saigon for 3 months, editing the 25th Infantry Division newspaper. Gino and I lived on the second floor of a 2-story building. A print shop across the street, Catholic church down the road. I've been trying now for 4 weeks to find that alleyway on the Ho Chi Minh expat Facebook page. I've gotten 450 likes, but I'd trade all those likes for one lead because Gino and I had such amazing times and adventures along that alleyway. Here I am, here with Gino in our room, and you can see I am playing chopsticks on my empty glass to lament the passing of our good brethren, Johnny Walker. The bars are put in place there to make sure no Viet Cong came in at night to slit our throats. And here's what the alleyway looked like with the house, church, and print shop behind us. There's a classic circa 1948 French Citroën, a few kids playing in the street. Now, Gino texted me earlier today that up here, the main street there, he thinks it is called Win Kiem. Might as well post that. I know, it's a long shot. So you think the traffic in the Bay Area sucks? My tour bus is surrounded by 200 motorcycles. Some of them are just popping up onto the sidewalk and passing pedestrians. In 1966, Saigon was 5 million people. Today it's 10. And what used to be a 40-minute, 30-mile Jeep ride out to Cu Chi is now going to take, I am told, almost 2 hours with nothing but homes and businesses almost all the way. And the air conditioning barely works. and the fat German in front of me is farting. But it does give me an opportunity to think back to my first trip out to Cu Chi aboard an Army helicopter, just flying over these beautiful green rice fields. But the truth is, I was scared to death. Sure that there's, huddled up against the chopper door, sure there was Viet Cong behind every single tree. And when we got to Cu Chi, I couldn't sleep for 2 weeks. Gunfire coming over the tent every single night. Wow. Memories. Okay, so now we're down to about 50 motorcycles. And I could actually see a little green between the homes and the businesses. A soup shop, a coffee shop, motorcycle repair place. You know what I'd actually like to do with LBJ? I'd like to return it right to the scene of the crime. From LBJ right at Cu Chi. I mean, don't you think that I could find a lot of Cu Chi vets like myself? And certainly there's a whole ton of South Vietnamese and Viet Cong soldiers still around. And I'm sure like 1 or 2 of those VC actually mortared our base camp. And don't you think that they would come to the show if I comped them tickets to the first row? Because if I could pull that off, I could get Leslie Stahl and her crew out here for 60 minutes of kumbaya. Kumbaya! We almost Cu Chi. Well, now we're down to nothing but green, rice paddies and jungle. Text from my daughter Rebecca. Dad, did you read the news? The communists have just arrested a prominent civil rights blogger just for jogging. Dad, have your friends distribute CDs of your stupid play after you leave the country. Dad, Dad, Dad. You know, in the space of 7 sentences, my daughter has misspelled 20 words. Young people. Almost Cu Chi. Well, let me tell you what I'd like to happen when we get to Cu Chi. Andy Landon is going to come pick me up in his Jeep. Andy, it's been so many years, man. And Andy's going to drive me crazy like to the public information office. I'm going to stand over my old typewriter. I'm going to look at the pictures of my mom and my dad and my sisters and brother and the Playboy pinup girls. And then I'm going to open up this box of goodies from my folks. The main feature being, of course, this 6-pound stick of Italian salami from Molinari's in North Beach. And I'm going to share this sucker with everybody in the office. Except for asshole Captain Muttface. And that night, we're going to just sit around the office, me and my buddies, and Andy and Gino, Jimmy Joe Fish, and we're going to talk about what we talked about every single night, which is how fucked up this war is, and how every single one of us is just counting the number of days until we go home. Well, as Walter would say, that's the way it was. Wonder why we're pulling over in the middle of the jungle. We are now at the Cu Chi. Please go from bus. So we tourists, mostly Europeans and Americans, a couple Asians, exit the bus. Seems like the only Vietnamese here are the guides and the guards. Please, 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 please. We at the Cu Chi Tunnel System is part of Vietnam War Memorial Theme Park. Theme Park, says the German, like Disneyland, I want to ride the roller coaster through the tunnel with a Mickey Mouse. No rat or mouse in tunnel now. Okay, the tunnels are just fine, but I'm here to see Cu Chi. And other than this open air theater with a thatched roof and a bunch of underground exhibits with BC mannequins dressed in green jungle fatigues and green sun hats, this place is nothing but a big old rubber plantation with all the trees planted straight up and down. Excuse me, where's Cu Chi? This Cu Chi. Many things to, and what is all that noise? This Cu Chi rifle range. You can rent a different rifle, buy bullets, shoot at target in B-52 crater. But I'm here to see Cu Chi. Where's Cu Chi? The guy takes us down to the underground structure, the VC kitchen. 4 VC eating vegetables and rice. VC first aid station. One soldier being treated for an arm wound, another for a leg wound. VC battlefield tactical room. 4 officers sitting around the battlefield. There's a rusting 75 millimeter recoilless rifle here. That's the same weapon that was used to kill my buddies. And once again, I'm back to April 10th, 1967. Gino Caro is rushed to the 12th medevac. The bombs are still falling. One hits near the building, sending furniture and instruments to the ground in symphonic thunder. A frazzled nurse pumps 2 quarts of the wrong blood into Gino. Then he walks away, convinced Gino will die, but nobody will notice in the fog of war. But Doug sees Gino turn gray, and he grabs the nurse. You get back there and save that soldier, I will strangle you right here. While Gino is in surgery, Doug goes to Graves registration to identify the dead. He thinks, one summer I cleaned ducks in a slaughterhouse like this. But poor Doug does not realize he will require puzzle master skills for this job. You have Jimmy Edwards' head on Joe Kramer's body. The right leg of David Fisher belongs on Joe. Gino emerges from surgery and sees the wolfhounds have brought in 2 wounded enemy combatants along with their 75 millimeter recoilless rifle. Doug, I watch the wolfhounds, a cuss and a kick of the VC, and they twitch and moan on the floor for an hour, and finally I die. There's a part of me that feels sorry for the VSC, and another part of me enraged. I can now get off of my bunk and help the wolfhounds kick the motherfuckers to death. We leave the final of the underground exhibits, but all I can think about is the 75 millimeter recoilless rifle. Now we go see movie. A movie very good. Then go see tunnels. There is a colorful, glossy map of present-day Cu Chi here, and a 50-year-old map of the Cu Chi tunnel system. Whoa! Some of the tunnels actually going underneath the base camp. Wow! Back then, I could have been sitting here typing up a story about the tunnels in Boloy Woods, 20 miles from here, and not realize that some VC could be sitting right underneath me drinking a cup of tea. A small monitor comes alive. A black and white film, flickering, grainy, soft music, narration. Cu Chi was a beautiful place. Farmers in the field, smiling students at their school desk. But this land was much destroyed by cruel Americans. They brought B-52 bombers, modern artillery, chemical and gas toxicants. And who were their targets? Women and children, livestock and poultry, even Buddhist statues. Bombs floating through the air, a large Buddhist statue in ruins. Well, you know, this is just a bunch of propaganda. I mean, like, really? Americans, cruel Americans that only targeted women and children? Well, a lot of this was true. The Americans wanted to level this land, but through resistance by local guerrillas like Little Girl Co. 2, they have been halted. The girl, about 14, carrying a rifle through the jungle. Through preventative actions, Co. 2 has killed 118 American soldiers. Yeah, like right. Some 14-year-old, oh my God. The soldier next to her is carrying a 75mm recoilless rifle. So I whispered to this young Swedish couple next to me, I'll bet you and everybody else here do not realize that 50 years ago there were 15,000 American soldiers here. And I was one of them. And somewhere over there was the base camp of our beloved wolfhounds. And I'm sure out there on Christmas Eve 1966 was probably the spot where Bob Hope and his gals allowed us to forget about this war for 2 hours. And I think somewhere over there was the tent I lived in with my buddies. But the young Swedish couple just glance my way for a second and then go back to watching the film. Now we're in the famous Cu Chi tunnels. And this is just more of the Cu Chi BS. These tunnels have all been rebuilt for us fat tourists. And the Germans up there farting. I'm on my way back to the bus. Now you go Cu Chi rifle range. What? You only won here from Cu Chi before. Well, let me tell you all something. I spent 1 year in Vietnam, and I never shot one bullet. And I wasn't going to start now. Jack and I are out for breakfast at my Grand Hotel, 22nd floor, open air restaurant. We have this stunning view of the shimmering and snaking Saigon River 1 block away. It is dotted with old world sampans and flanked by new Millennium Towers. I really like Jack. He's a tall, husky guy with blonde hair, blue eyes, and a mustache. Not only has he made his best efforts to get LBJ going, but he's also tried to allow me to have a good stay here. In fact, he and his husband Jeff took me out to dinner at the Continental Hotel the other night. The old 1870 French colonial classic where in room 214 Graham Greene wrote The Quiet American. How interesting that Jack, the Vietnamese, would be inclusive enough to permit gay marriage, but I have to ask permission to do a play. So Dave, I've got some good news. We're in business with LBJ. A good friend of mine, Bernard. He works in the marketing sector of Viet Petro, a bloke from England. He has a large house in District 4 with a large room upstairs, can accommodate 25 to 30 people. we'll invite some folks. Word of mouth, no charge, no publicity. Can you do it this Saturday night? Saturday night? That is the 41st anniversary of the fall of Saigon. Well, as it is known here, Liberation Day. Okay, matter of perspective. Speaking of perspective, we can't have any Vietnamese at the show. What? It's too risky. Has to be all expats, Yankees, Aussies, British, some Europeans. But Jack, what is the point of me doing the show in Vietnam if I can't have any Vietnamese people there? Dave, you still don't seem to get it. The Vietnamese people have been traumatized by 30 years of war, and 4 decades later, it never ends. The last American died a few days after Saigon fell, but just 3 days ago, 2 Vietnamese men were killed in the Central Highlands trying to disarm a 500-pound bomb. Between them, they left 2 widows and 9 orphans. Come back in 10 years, maybe things will be different, but for now, it's a beautiful country, and we're going to get LBJ done. So I called Sandra that night to let her know there's been a change in the situation. I'm going to be performing on Saturday night, and honey, that is the 41st anniversary of the fall of Saigon. Isn't that awesome? Sandra? Sandra? No, not awesome. You're going to get arrested. Honey, Obama is coming to Vietnam in 2 weeks. The Vietnamese are not going to do something stupid. David, Obama is not coming to Vietnam to give you a get out of jail free card. Honey, the worst that can happen is they would detain me, fine me, and boot me. Everything's going to be just fine. I'm going to be home in 3 days. Or will I be home in 3 days? I mean, I actually have the telephone number of the American Embassy in Hanoi right in here. Okay, if I were to get arrested, there probably would be a lot of media attention. And maybe I could parlay that into at least a short run for LBJ off Broadway. What do you think? I'm back at the hotel. I'm working on a double espresso here, and I'm about to head out to a local museum. And you folks may remember that I've been trying to find this what? Wow. I think somebody has found the alleyway. I mean, there's the church. I mean, it's been modernized, but that is the church. Wow, if the church is there, that means that the house and the print shop may still be there. Oh, the print shop. I can guarantee that nobody in this room has ever worked in a situation like this. Here are the people who put out the trumpet lightning news. You'll see there is no linotype machine in this picture. You 2 young people will have to Google that. That is because everything was put out by hand, letter by letter from these trays. And like any office, by a bunch of kids that don't speak any English. And every office, of course, has its politics. This guy, Trang, you could see kind of a sourpuss. Quan, kind of the joker. They bickered all the time. One day, Quan couldn't find his lunch. Blamed Trang. Trang threw him to the ground, put him into a headlock, And let me tell you, we have 4 plates like right here, ready to go to the print shop that night. And they are staggering across the room. We're all screaming and yelling, and they plow right into the plate, sending about 200,000 characters flying down into the ground. And of course, no Humpty Dumpty can clean this one up. Oh yeah, 2 months later, the Saigon police were going through town on a recruitment drive, Army recruitment drive. Just at the time our guys were straggling into work, we heard warning gunshots outside, we smelled cordite in the office, and we never saw Quan again. And of course we were all unhappy about that. Well, except Quan, who seemed to smile the rest of the week. So I took a 20-minute walk from the hotel to the War Remnants Museum. I know, remnants. Sounds like something that the waiter brings out, the waiter clears off before the coffee and dessert arrive. The remnants in this case is actually remnants of the war, captured American military equipment filling up this courtyard. An M48 tank. Huey helicopter, 175 millimeter cannon. And as I enter the courtyard, this Vietnamese man starts walking toward me. He has 2 stumps for arms, and he's blind in one eye. And he says, "I am V. I victim of landmine. My father fight for South. You want buy book? $10. And he shoves this book into my hand. And no, this is a book on the tunnels of Cu Chi. And no, I already know enough about Cu Chi. I don't want to, and you know, I could probably for $4 go on Amazon and have it waiting for me when I get back home. And this book is on top of it, it's like it's a knockoff. The back jacket reads that American tenor rats went into dark holes armed only with pistons. $10. I'm kind of a cheap guy. But 2 stumps, 1 eye. So I enter the museum. It's a tall, bold, boxy structure, and inside it's like any museum in the West. The exhibits are well hung, it's well lit. Once again though, no Vietnamese here. And the first exhibit I'm standing before is a picture of a sweet but sad little girl, propaganda poster. The caption says she's among the first victims of the American War being treated at the Children's Hospital in Hanoi. And right at that moment, my iPhone started playing Bridge Over Troubled Water. I don't know how this happened, it just did. Now I'm looking at pictures of people marching against America, Latinos in Colombia, Chinese in Hong Kong, Africans in Kampala, Uganda. It reminded me of just how much everybody was against us 50 years ago. And I was against us, coming home in 1968, speaking in my uniform before 15,000 people at City Hall. And when I look at these pictures, I want to send a picture of me at the podium there that day, just in case someday my grandson Mason, who's 8 years old now, comes to this museum. He'll see that Grandpa did something that was very hard to do, that had to be done. Another floor, a series of 5 photographs of children on hospital beds. Here's a girl in a pink dress. She is missing 1 arm and 2 legs, and yet she's trying to smile. And these are the victims, the pictures in rooms devoted to the victims of landmines. Maybe I should give MV a few more dollars when I go. Another floor, a middle-aged Muslim tourist in her hijab is crying as she looks at the picture of a little boy. He's dressed in a white t-shirt and rainbow green striped shorts. The boy's head is oval shaped and his eyes protrude out like 2 apricots. He looks like some exotic insect from deep in a humid jungle. And these, of course, are the victims in the pictures of Agent Orange. Another floor, picture after picture after picture of alleged American atrocities against the Vietnamese civilians. Not merely My Lai, but apparently many My Lais. And I don't understand this at all, because it wasn't part of my experience in Vietnam. And my buddies never said they saw anything like this. But now I think back to April 1966. I was out on a search and destroy mission, and there was a couple of pops, like popcorn, pop, pop, from near a village. And the next thing I know is that all our tanks and armored personnel carriers and helicopter gunships are flying toward that village. I didn't understand it because I had just had a story published like 2 weeks previously quoting an American officer that no battle can commence until it was clear that there were no civilians or friendly forces in the area. And yet we went right by that village and literally destroyed it with gunfire and rockets. And in fact, I took this picture from my APC. This is my gunner Frank. He is from Alameda, and he is firing his 50 caliber machine gun, which is actually a weapon powerful enough to bring down a low-flying airplane. This is his M16. Here are the 50 caliber machine guns, and you can see that these hooches, or thatched huts where Vietnamese families live, are on fire. And as I think about this picture and the destruction that we did, and I look at these pictures in the museum of the Vietnamese women in white blouses and black pajamas cradling their kids in ditches, I can't help wonder if when our soldiers went into the village after the battle, whether they indeed saw something like this. An American soldier is holding a Vietnamese head. The caption reads, "After decapitating a gorilla, GI seems to enjoy posing for a picture." Okay, so once again, this is just too one-sided. It only shows part of the picture, because I saw a different kind of picture also. I went into villages with our doctors and was with them when they treated the Vietnamese people and built medical clinics and built schools. And I did a story on this kid from Vermont, Tony Murdoch. He flew a helicopter by day, but he tutored Vietnamese kids at night, and he talked about how good it made him feel to help the Vietnamese people. Because I believe that Americans want to do the right thing. They want to do good. I believe it's in our democratic bones to try to do good. Just before I left for Vietnam, I posted on the Vietnam Veterans Facebook page that I was going back to Vietnam for the first time in 50 years to, quote, return to the scene of the crime. I got some comments. Crime? What the fuck crime you talking about? Yeah, if there's any crime, we didn't finish the job. Well, if there were crimes at the scene, what were mine? I was drafted. But I could have become a conscientious objector, gone to Canada, gone to jail. But I came to Vietnam and I wrote and I published stories that I knew were lies. And when I got back to the office after this attack on the village, I didn't tell anybody. And I never wrote home to my folks about it or told anybody. And I even wonder if today there aren't 2 or 3 50-year-old men walking through Saigon with bald heads and big noses that grew up without a biological father. And does it balance the scales that I gave money later to Vietnamese orphanages that took in abandoned half-American kids and protested the war when I came home? And part of that protest was sending a 3-minute 8mm film that I shot of this battle to the media so the American people would have a chance to see what was happening there. And later did a play that talked about how this war tainted everything it touched. Did I do enough? Did I do it soon enough? There is no bridge over these troubled waters. I call Sandra that night. Hi, honey. Hi, sweetheart. How's it going? Hey, isn't it 3 a.m. there? Don't you have a rehearsal tomorrow? I can't sleep. The museum? They should just call it the American Atrocities Museum. I don't know how anybody could go there and sleep. Wow. Sounds like the museum we visited at Auschwitz. Yeah. Except this time, I feel like the German. It's the night of the play, and as I leave the hotel in my cab, I can't help but think of what Gino said. Dave, just remember, 1 out of every 10 Vietnamese paid government informer. God forbid they should come after you. So I have the cab driver drop me off at a Thai restaurant 2.5 blocks from Bernard's house. I pretend to look at the menu in the window as the cab slips away. I start up the street under dim light. There's an old Vietnamese man sitting on the steps, staring at me. Bernard ushers me into his house. It's a modern, spacious, 3-story building. His wife Alice is putting the 2 girls to bed. He escorts me up to the 3rd floor master bedroom. It is my green room. And I must confess, this is the strangest situation. I've performed scores and scores of time, but this is the most bizarre situation I've ever encountered. My pre-show routine, some of you will probably find this a little odd, but I just lie backstage underneath my hoodie, trying to stay warm, on the floor, praying to God to give me the strength to serve those who come. When I hear the first notes of the final pre-show music cut, I get up, start dancing, born in the USA, and try to hit the stage running. But tonight, I am pacing around a bed and wondering why I am sweating when the air conditioning is on. Text from my daughter Rebecca, "Dad, don't!" followed by 200 exclamation points. I hear Jack's voice from behind the door, so please welcome to the stage David Kleinberg and AALBJ. I hear the opening music cue, jungle music. And what the hell? Nothing but a bunch of kids out here. Back home, 95% of my audience is people of my generation. But most of the people out here tonight look like they're barely much older than I was when I first came here. And who are they? Teachers, nurses, Viet Petro workers. They're all staggered out there in folding chairs, a couple in a love seat, a guy on an ottoman, and the entire first row is composed of people sitting on cushions and pillows. There's no way under the world they're going to be able to relate to this. But nonetheless, I become the 23-year-old David out in Hobo Woods, armed with my rifle and sure that I'm going to get shot. And they're actually paying attention. Maybe there is some hope here. And so the train has left the station, and shortly down the tracks, I hear explosions outside. Yes, it is the 41st anniversary of the day that the Vietnamese 86th the Americans. And how wonderful to hear explosions of joy and pride instead of those of war and destruction. And soon after, an hour of stage time seems to have slipped away, and I can see the train is heading back into the station. And so, in the end, this piece is dedicated to the 58,282 people whose names grace the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C. And the 2 million Vietnamese who died in this tragic conflict. What? What did I just say? I have performed LBJ on stage maybe 30 times, probably practiced it 300 times, and never once did I think of the Vietnamese casualties. Nor did one audience member ever approach me about this blind sin of admission. I performed LBJ in DC, and I handed out postcards 6 or 7 times near the wall, so I know that that wall is 450 feet long. If they were to build a similar wall in Vietnam, of course called the American Wall, I'd have to walk more than 4.3 miles to get to the end of it. And so, hey, LBJ is officially over. The lights flick off, they flick back on. And it's deadly silent. Well, you know, we're not in a theater. Maybe they don't know the show is over. I mean, we can't fade to black here. Well, there's a couple of women over there crying. And a couple of guys over here starting to clap, and now everybody's starting to clap, and now it's really becoming thunderous clapping, and it's going on and on and on. You know, actually it's getting a little embarrassing. I mean, I like it, but it's you know, a little embarrassing, please. A couple of minutes later, Jack comes over, gives me a hug, and hands me a Ba Mooey Ba beer. Jack, amazing to be able to do this piece in this country on this night before a young audience. Dave, this is not just a young audience. They live and they work in an alien nation. Everywhere they go, everything they do, they can feel the vibration that something has happened, but they can't put their finger on it. Tonight, you filled in some of the blanks. And so I thank Jack for hiring a photographer to shoot the show. Dave, no problem. But for all our sakes, whatever you do, if you use any of the pictures with people in them, you must blur the photograph. So if there are any of you out here tonight that feels like you'd like to do a play like this in a totalitarian nation, this is what your audience might look like. I am standing at the top of Win Kiem. Thank you, Gino. Thank you, Facebook. Thank you, expats. Thank you for the church still being there. When Gino and I lived in that room, our landlords lived downstairs. A Vietnamese family, couple, and their 7 children. They occupied the same amount of space that Gino and I had upstairs. And I knew even then the honor that I had just by my citizenship. And I think Gino and I acted on that privilege by blithely walking through their quarters on a daily basis without ever even acknowledging that they existed. Well, time to go see. Print shop is gone. I hope Trang and Quan are doing okay. But the house is still here. It's exactly as it was. This is the house that whoa! Guy just pulled up in his motorcycle and getting off, pulling his keys out. Now he's looking at me and probably figuring, who the heck is this? Yeah, I'm David Kleinberg. I've come from America, and I lived up there 50 years ago. And he says to me, Joseph Luong, I lived down here 50 years ago. I 8 years old then. I remember you guys. What? Is this possible? And so I get my iPad out and I show him a picture of the street. And he gets his iPhone out and takes a picture of the picture, and then he says to me, this, my sister Phuong, 14 then, now live Netherlands. Sister Bon, 12, now live Southern California with family. Brother Duk Tu, now take care of mother, 91. One brother died in ocean when Saigon fall. And so he takes me to meet his wife Maya and his son and daughter. They don't know what to make of it. Now you go through house. Maybe you find something, you leave. And so I start through the house as I did 50 years ago. And it's exactly the same bedrooms, the same kitchen, but his wife is working on the family desktop, and his daughter is playing a computer game on her iPad. We start up the steps toward the second floor, and Joseph is filming me with his iPhone while I am filming him with my iPhone. And we are both laughing uproariously over the preposterousness of this situation. At the top of the steps, I'm greeted by the still lone bathroom, which back then was shared by 11 people. I turn the corner and all the memories come flooding back. I can see 2 army cots under a tight mosquito netting, a couple of nightstands with family pictures, foot lockers in both corners, and there on the desk, I imagine 2 full bottles of Johnny Walker. In the end, hardly anything has changed over all this time, but I can see one fundamental difference. Back then, in a time of war and hardship, 9 Oolongs shared the cramped quarters of one floor. Today, 4 Oolongs have the glorious romp of the entire house. And Joseph has expropriated my room for their master bedroom where they sleep on a spacious queen-size bed. No mosquito netting, no bars necessary. Sometimes the measuring stick of life comes down to these small incremental changes. I see a flood of people heading down the street into the church for the 5 o'clock ceremony. Joseph and I hug goodbye, and we vow to become Facebook friends. Before I go into the church, let me show you the last of these last 2 pictures. Here are Joseph and I, and here, of course, is where I lived 50 years before. And here is me with Joseph and his family. I take a seat at the very back of the church. It is completely packed today. There are more than 400 people here. I am the only Jew in a congregation of Catholics. I am the only American in a congregation of Vietnamese. And I'm the only person in the building that does not understand the language of the ceremony. But I do comprehend the only word that really counts. And that word is, of course, amen, which means so be it. And I know for the very first time, my last night in Vietnam, that I will finally sleep well. So be it.